Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, I got a super fun and exciting episode for you guys today, because as of a day ago, at least to my recording of this audio, Dolphin Emulator for GameCube and Wii got a massive update right before Christmas. Now, odds are I'm probably going to show you this video the day after Christmas on December 26th, so it will be a few days old at that point in time, but scheduling around Christmas is always hard. But as far as Christmas gifts under the tree are concerned, a big meaty Dolphin update, absolutely something I want to unwrap. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But honestly, I absolutely love the Dolphin Emulator, and anytime I talk about the updates, people are stoked. One of my favorite things about Dolphin is not just that it updates constantly, it's that the developers leave comprehensive patch notes and explanations of every single feature. Because trust me, there's a metric crap ton of emulators out there that update all the time, but Dolphin's team basically does the #1 job when it comes to actually explaining to the end user exactly what the updates are, what they can affect, what people can expect out of them. And honestly, Dolphin is right up there with stuff like PCSX2 and DuckStation as far as honestly just being near to perfect emulation for this hardware. And even though we have stuff like GameCube decomps going around right now, Dolphin is definitely still going to be in the lead for decades, because trust me, we are never going to live in a world where every single GameCube and Wii game has been decompiled and ported to PC. The technology for automation is not there, and again, no one really wants to decompile all of the shovelware, especially on the Wii side of things, to make it run on PC in the future. So stuff like Dolphin Emulation absolutely is going to keep the dream alive for decades to come. So you'll see here in release 25 of 12 that came out just yesterday as of the recording of this, you get the Dolphin progress report. And again, I really love how they communicate, because you can just read the headings and get the top level information, or you can dig down and get all this different granular explanation as to what's going on. But the big change here outside of Android, which we'll get into in a little bit, is going to be different frame modes. Now, a lot of times in emulation, people love to talk about emulation latency, frame pacing, and everything else. And I would say Dolphin does an incredible job of dealing with all of those things. The nice part is these systems are double buffered, so really there's already an inherent latency if you're playing a GameCube or Wii on a CRT television to the tune of about 60 milliseconds. That's just because that's how that double buffer works. So latency on GameCube and Wii really aren't as important as when we talk about it on stuff like Super Nintendo, Neo Geo, arcade games, and otherwise. But you're going to see here they added a new feature, rush frame presentation and smooth frame presentation options. This is kind of going to go around and quote-unquote massage all of the different frames so that you get a smoother experience, and in some instances it's even actually going to have reduced latency compared to the original hardware. Now, I don't want you to think this is some sort of magic bullet that's just going to improve absolutely everything, because both of these modes, the developers say that for some games they're just not going to be very happy with how it actually operates. But if you take a look at the latency test here with Smash Bros. Melee, you'll see here in the milliseconds, lower is better. The real console on CRT is 62 milliseconds, and then as you go into rush and immediate mode, you drop down to 53.3 milliseconds and then 37 milliseconds, almost getting an entire frame shaved off on the input. Now again, these games basically expect there to be a delay in the input because the developers knew that it was double buffered, but honestly this is just going to change things up and maybe give you a smoother experience in some games. What I really love is the Dolphin developers keep trying new things to basically make an already 10 out of 10 emulator get up to that 11 out of 10 status. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me, in all of your time playing GameCube emulation or Wii emulation, have you ever felt that latency was a concern? At least for me, on a powerful system with a nice monitor, I've never once been able to point to the game and say, I feel like I'm not performing because I have latency in my input. Now, of course, that's going to vary across the board depending on what sort of system specs you bring along for the ride. So trust me, even though Dolphin emulation is the most expensive thing as far as hardware is concerned, the reality is the more horsepower you give something like Dolphin, the better chance you are going to get of just having a seamless experience. For me personally, just so you know, I use an i9-12900K on water cooling and overclocked with 64 gigabytes of RAM and an NVIDIA 3080 Ti, and honestly that 64 gigabytes of RAM at this point in time probably makes me a millionaire in the current pricing structure. But all jokes aside, again, lower is better, and getting something down to 24 milliseconds if you actually have melee hacks on, straight up magic. But there are some video examples on this page, and I will leave that link in the description below, where you can see some games just don't like this whatsoever, and shocker, a Factor 5 Star Wars game presents issues because those games always push the hardware in new and unique ways. And honestly, in some games, quote-unquote latency isn't really going to matter. Something like Luigi's Mansion, not really a fast-paced game whatsoever, not anything that really requires a lot of precise frame inputs or frame timing windows so you actually be able to do whatever it is you want in the game. So again, this is not a magic bullet. It's not going to improve everything across the board. Technically, it can improve something like Luigi's Mansion, but you're not really going to notice because the game really isn't asking any sort of performance of you that is going to be sensitive to frame timings. If you take a look at the progress report again, you're going to see them talking about exactly this, talking about frame limiters. And if we actually use this video example down here, the immediate XFB versus the rush frame presentation, you're going to see how the actual movement in Mario is going to slightly change, basically being a frame off. You can decide whether or not you want to use this or not. It's totally up to you. I would definitely play around with it game to game. And just remember one thing, all of these latency measurements, all of the overall controller input millisecond responses, I'm sure that is factoring in that the controller is hardwired. Don't forget that the best way to use a controller on emulation or basically anything is having a USB cable directly connected to the controller and your PC. Because if you're using Bluetooth, if you're using Wi-Fi, you never know what those actual adapters are going to do as far as introducing more latency in your controls. It's something I see all the time. People will say, this isn't working well, there's too much latency in it, whether it's emulation or on Mr. FPJ, and I ask them what they're using for a controller, and 10 out of 10 times it's because whatever adapter they're using or controller they're using inherently puts like a frame or two of lag on just based upon how it communicates. And if you are curious, if you have a wireless adapter, you can basically look those up and find latency information online. And definitely you might want to change out your hardware if you're having issues with that, because trust me, it makes a huge difference. And you'll see here you also get smooth frame presentation, which is going to delay the presentation by roughly 1 to 2 milliseconds to try to get things back into timing if they drift too far apart. But I want you to remember one thing. Dolphin is an amazing emulator. They give you so many fun new features basically monthly, but the one thing Dolphin Emulator can't do, along with any other emulator, is make a bad game good. Something like Die Hard Vendetta, which I was going to make a Christmas episode out of, but then basically stopped at the last second. It doesn't matter if this game is smoother, the gameplay is still Die Hard Vendetta, which means it is like a 6 out of 10 at best. And I know a lot of times people in the comments write, when's something going to come to Android, because they kind of feel a little bit neglected, and in some instances they definitely are. Retro achievements are now going to be available for Android Dolphin Emulation. I'm sure that's going to make a lot of people very excited. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me, are you a retro achievements user or not? For me personally, it's nothing I've ever turned on. I totally get why it's important to people, and I'm stoked that you're stoked. It's just not something that I've ever actually been interested in. But also on modern consoles, I really don't care about the achievements either. I just play games more often than not, run out of time, abandon them halfway through, and then forget what I was doing next time I sit down to try to play more of it. The shame pile of video game esoterica heavy industries is real, and it keeps growing by the month. And as far as controllers are concerned, I know we talked about hardwired versus wireless, but there's going to be new stock profiles for GameCube setup as well. And if you're wondering, every single time I capture any emulation footage or any gameplay footage on my computer that isn't FPGA original console based, I am always 100% of the time hardwired. And maybe the best feature this month, you can just reset everything back to stock settings, so if you screw everything up, you're good to go. And I don't usually use this as well as far as the broadband adapter is concerned, but now you can run multiple instances of Dolphin on the same machine, even playing around with real hardware, so the people that enjoy that are definitely going to have a good time. But as far as the biggest features this month and things that I think are going to be huge moving forward, all of these new frame pacing options are going to absolutely be incredible, because people definitely want less latency in their gameplay, and even though GameCube and Wii basically had baked in latency as far as the double buffer is concerned, more options are better, and the Dolphin team still commits to trying to make this thing absolutely the best they possibly can. And I love there's basically what looks like a quasi-Christmas themed level in this game. I know it really isn't Christmas themed, but it works because, again, you're going to be watching this thing, I believe, December 26th, but we'll see how the schedule goes, because holiday scheduling is always hard. But honestly, I'm always impressed by the Dolphin team bringing new innovations to GameCube and Wii emulation. Like I said, even though decomps, recomps, and PC ports are starting to become a thing, it is going to take a long time on the GameCube side, and having Dolphin Emulator continually update means every single game on the GameCube and Wii, outside of a few, is going to be infinitely playable and look way better than it ever did on real hardware. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me, though, if one GameCube game and Wii game could just show up as a PC port, which ones would you want? Hope you guys had a good holiday season. Leave me what you got as your big gift down below in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.